Quotes about Palestine, to understand the source of the conflict. Some quotes about Palestine by Human Rights Watch, Christopher Hitchin, Bertrand Russell, Mahatma Gandhi, Rachel Corrie, Suad Amiri, Suhair Hamid, Saddam Hussein.
Palestine belongs to the Arabs in the same sense that England belongs to the English or France to the French. It is wrong and inhuman to impose the Jews on the Arabs. Surely it would be a crime against humanity to reduce the proud Arabs so that Palestine can be restored to the Jews partly or wholly as their national home. Mahatma Gandhi. Actually, and this was where I began to feel seriously uncomfortable, some such divine claim underlay not just the occupation but the whole idea of a separate state for Jews in Palestine. Take away the divine warrant for the Holy Land and where were you, and what were you? Just another land thief like the Turks or the British, except that in this case you wanted the land without the people. And the original Zionist slogan, a land without a people for a people without a land, disclosed its own negation when I saw the densely populated Arab towns dwelling sullenly under Jewish tutelage. You want irony? How about Jews becoming colonizers at just the moment when other Europeans had given up on the idea? Christopher Hitchens, Hitch 22, a memoir. How much longer is the world willing to endure this spectacle of wanton cruelty? Bertrand Russell. There's a Palestine that dwells inside all of us, a Palestine that needs to be rescued, a free Palestine where all people regardless of color, religion, or race coexist, a Palestine where the meaning of the word occupation is only restricted to what the dictionary says rather than those plenty of meanings and connotations of death, destruction, pain, suffering, deprivation, isolation and restrictions that Israel has injected the word with. Rafat Al-Arir, Gaza writes back.
Occupation, curfew, settlements, closed military zone, administrative detention, siege, preventive strike, terrorist infrastructure, transfer. Their war destroys language. Speaks genocide with the words of a quiet technician. Occupation means that you cannot trust the open sky, or any open street near to the gates of Sniper's Tower. It means that you cannot trust the future or have faith that the past will always be there. Occupation means you live out your life under military rule, and the constant threat of death, a quick death from a sniper's bullet or a rocket attack from an M16. A crushing, suffocating death, a slow bleeding death in an ambulance stopped for hours at a checkpoint. A dark death, at a torture table in an Israeli prison, just a random arbitrary death. A cold calculated death, from a curable disease. 1,000 small deaths while you watch your family dying around you. Occupation means that every day you die, and the world watches in silence. As if your death was nothing, as if you were a stone falling in the earth, water falling over water. And if you face all of this death and indifference and keep your humanity, and your love and your dignity and you refuse to surrender to their terror, then you know something of the courage that is Palestine. Suhair Hamid.
The West needs someone to tell the man who walks around with the biggest stick in the world, that stick can bring down God's house. Saddam Hussein.
The Palestinians try hard to forget when they should remember. The Israelis try hard to remember when they should forget. The Palestinians refuse to be victims. The Israelis make sure that they remain the only victims. Suad Amiri, Golda slept here. I think it was smart that you are wary of using the word terrorism, and if you talk about the cycle of violence, or an eye for an eye, you could be perpetuating the idea that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a balanced conflict, instead of a largely unarmed people against the fourth most powerful military in the world. Rachel Corey, my name is Rachel Corey.
Occupation has no place in a civilized society. It is time Palestine redeemed freedom from Israeli occupation, Scotland from British occupation, and Jammu and Kashmir from Indian occupation. Abhijit Nuskar, hometown human, to live for soil and society.
States should vet agreements, cooperation schemes, and all forms of trade and dealing with Israel to screen for those directly contributing to the commission of the crimes of apartheid and persecution against Palestinians, mitigate the human rights impacts, and, where not possible, end the activities and funding found to facilitate these serious crimes. Human Rights Watch, a threshold crossed, Israeli authorities and the crimes of apartheid and persecution. Every day a person is born in Gaza into an open-air prison, in the West Bank without civil rights, in Israel with an inferior status by law, and in neighboring countries effectively condemned to lifelong refugee status, like their parents and grandparents before them, solely because they are Palestinian and not Jewish. In a 1990 interview with an Israeli newspaper, Teddy Kollek, mayor of Jerusalem from 1965 to 1993, said, "For Jewish Jerusalem, I did something in the past 25 years. For East Jerusalem? Nothing. What did I do? Nothing. Sidewalks? Nothing. Cultural institutions? Not one. Yes, we installed a sewerage system for them and improved the water supply. Do you know why? Do you think it was for their good, for their welfare? Forget it. There were some cases of cholera there, and the Jews were afraid that they would catch it, so we installed sewerage and a water system against cholera." States should impose individual sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes, against officials and individuals responsible for the continued commission of these serious crimes and condition arms sales and military and security assistance to Israel on Israeli authorities taking concrete and verifiable steps towards ending their commission of the crimes of apartheid and persecution. On July 7, 1967, exactly 1 month after the Israeli army occupied the West Bank, Israel's then Prime Minister Levi Eshkol of the Labour Party said, "The security and the land are in Israeli hands." 182 in a party meeting that year, Eshkol clarified that authorities covet the dowry, not the bride. 183 in apparent reference to wanting the West Bank without the Palestinians who live there. 52 years later, on July 10, 2019, Prime Minister Netanyahu of the Likud said, Israeli military and security forces will continue to rule the entire territory, up to the Jordan River. 184 he added on May 28, 2020, that we are the ones dictating security rules over the entire territory, describing West Bank Palestinians as subjects. But the main thing I learned from the war was that war is unjust, no matter who is pulling the trigger, and that, as my parents taught me, we owe it to each other as human beings to speak out against injustice. Sari Makdisi, Palestine Inside Out, an everyday occupation.
The finding of crimes against humanity should prompt the international community to re-evaluate its approach to Israel and Palestine. In light of the decades-long failure by Israeli authorities to rein in serious abuses, the International Criminal Court's Office of the Prosecutor should investigate and prosecute individuals credibly implicated in the crimes against humanity of apartheid or persecution.